This is the Partner's Partner Podcast. On today's episode,
you have to realize that, one, you have to know what you want to happen will happen, but two, you have to realize that it's going to be accompanied with hard work, that you can't wish your way with mindset. Mindset is, I'm going to be here. Then now it's get to work and do it and make sure that you are working together. And then this third piece, which I can only call faith, the true belief that no matter where things are today, if you know where you want to be, you'll eventually get there.
Hello, dear listener, and welcome to episode 37 of the Partner's Partner Podcast with me, Pete Daly Dixon. John Arnott, thank you for meeting me on a Sunday morning. That's precious family time, I would think. But welcome to the Partner's Partner Podcast. It's great to meet you. Looking forward to finding out a bit about you now that I've kind of set the context of our conversation.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of just say a little bit about what we were talking about that you weren't really sure what?
Sure. Yeah, it's good to be here, and it actually worked out well. 10 a.m. on a Sunday. The family are doing some other things right now, and so afterward we will have some family time.
Great.
And when I was researching things, I went through your LinkedIn. It was a very interesting profile, the different things that you do. And I also went to...
But there was nothing about this.
There was nothing about the Partner's Partner podcast in there. And so then I started hunting down your website, but only based off of the domain you use in your email address. And I couldn't find it there. And I was like, I guess I'm going to learn during the conversation what we'll be doing today.
Well, you had, I guess, just hearing that, you were probably a little bit surprised why I asked you the questions I did about sending the photos over and the book and stuff. I was thinking, wow, what's this guy doing?
I will say one thing. When you did that, I thought, what a great way to start something out.
Yeah.
Right, because it sets some context for what's important to the person you're interviewing. So I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah. It has been, it was an idea suggested to me by a really good friend in the UK. He's a professional master of ceremonies and commentator for the BBC. And before I started the podcast, I was just talking to him about it, and kind of, I'd never done anything. When I sat down at PartnerCon in 2017 with 12 conversations booked into my schedule over the next couple of days, I had never done anything like it before. And he said, well, why don't you just get people to send in a couple of photos of things that are important to them, and just use that as a backdrop to the conversation. So I did it more for me at the beginning, but actually what it's turned into is really great framework. I think people enjoy the process of finding the photos and then having an opportunity to chat about them.
I agree, and I did enjoy that process. It made me really think, and it also works as a nice way for us to transition through what we're discussing.
Yeah,
so that was a great idea.
Definitely. So do you want to give the listeners a bit of context about where we are physically and geographically?
Sure. We're in Dallas, Texas right now. I run a company called Content First Marketing. We specialize in nurture marketing. That's emphasis on copywriting and content writing over the long term. We do blogging, we write the emails, we do all the social posts, and of course everything's on a marketing automation layer using Infusionsoft.
Cool, great. And over the course of our chat, we'll kind of explore, I guess, how you got into that and the journey there. And this is the first for the podcast. It's the first episode recorded in a Starbucks. So I'm sure there'll be many more over the coming years. So I love the photos you sent over. Let's start chatting about the first one. I don't pick, you get to pick which one you want to chat about first, and we'll just use that as a launching point and take it from there.
All right, and so the first one from top to bottom is a picture from the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, looking down at the glacier, and that was just at sunrise, and it was just a very beautiful moment in time. I went up there last fall as it's just an adventure. And the story is interesting in that back in college, my roommate, who would become my best man, and I, we always talked about climbing the 7 summits. Like, that's what we're going to do. You always talk big in college, right?
Yeah, Everest and
that's
Rainier
right. Yeah, hit
Kilimanjaro.
the tallest peak on every continent. And we're going to do Kilimanjaro first because that's just a great one to learn if it's good for you, if you can do it, right? So it seems like a good starting point. So about 2 years ago, I email him and I'm like, Brian, are we going to do this before we're 50? And it was like, yeah, I guess we probably should. So we teed it up. And then last fall, I, and 14 other guys had an expedition going up the summit.
Did you all know each other, or did you just know?
No, it was great. And in fact, so he lives in Munich, Germany now. And so he knows people from all over Europe and then the US. And this group of people just convened together, and we got to know each other on this trip through different connections. So like my roommate, Brian, he may know a couple of people. They know other people, and it extended out, and it put together this great group of diverse personalities going up to the top. And at the summit, it was just a beautiful moment. And that's why I chose that picture to send to you.
And tell me about the process and the experience of getting ready for it, and you know, what you expected and what you actually experienced. And
that's a great question. Yeah. So once we agreed that we should do this, which was almost 2 years before we actually did it, then went on the process of, okay, how are we going to do this? So a year prior, started actually preparing for it, getting in shape for it. And shape is really more hiking. And I'm in Dallas, Texas. It's not like I can get much altitude.
No.
Right? I can't really experiment with altitude in Dallas.
I didn't realize how flat it was until I got here.
Yeah, so what we did do is a year beforehand, we went to Austria. So flew into Munich, and then we drove to Austria, and we did some hikes there. And that was a great way just to kind of get the experience. But the funny thing is it was supposed to be an opportunity to really hike and work on this. But we hiked one day, and then we went back to Oktoberfest. Because that's the time of year everyone can make it work. It happened to be the last part of September, so Oktoberfest was a little higher priority.
And how did that impact the climb and the expedition?
What I ended up doing is I ended up walking on a daily basis, and I actually was pretty comfortable with it. Altitude, I didn't have any altitude sickness, but the thinness of the air was the challenge. And the only thing I was able to really prepare there was just running. But it was good. I was able to accomplish it. And so the preparation was sufficient. The other preparation was just about what were you going to bring. Because you have a limited amount that you can bring up there. You can't overpack. And so I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, seeing what people brought. My favorite one was a guy came back and he unpacked his bag. He was a gentleman in the UK. He unpacks his bag and he goes through all the things he didn't use.
Okay.
So I knew, don't pack those things. It was very helpful.
So this is the fifth of six recordings that I'm doing around Texas, and 2 in Houston, and many others that are in season 1 at the moment. There's some element of physical challenge and adventure sort of seems to be something that comes up for quite a few people at various times. Is this the most physically challenging thing you've done? Or as you look back, do you think that, do you see other times where you've pushed yourself physically?
I'm not sure it's the most physically challenging thing I've done. I probably have in my younger years, but it was certainly taxing. I had never been in a situation where I couldn't catch my breath before.
Okay.
So if you go on a run and you're just really pushing it, you're breathing really heavily at the end of that. When I was getting close to the summit, but before sunrise, there were moments where I felt like somebody must feel when they have asthma, where I literally could not catch my breath.
You're breathing in, but it didn't
just
seem like anything was...
Exactly, the air was so thin. So that was taxing from a physiological point of view because I'd never experienced that before, true breathlessness. Mm-hmm. And so I had to adjust my pace accordingly. But physically, legs, things like that, no, I had done things much more taxing. It's just that thinness of the air, that was something I just never experienced before. You go to Colorado, you might be at 13,000 feet, maybe 14,000 feet. When you're at 19,341 feet, the air is just really thin. And that is it affects people differently. In my case, it was just challenging to breathe, and other people, they get altitude sickness. And I'm fortunate that didn't happen to the majority of our group.
And what about the mental side of it? I imagine that there's an element of mental toughness to keep going.
Yeah, that was the key. So not only was the air thin, it was minus 20 Celsius, so it was cold. And when we were going up, it was a very slow, steady process where you don't ever stop because you'll get too cold, but you can't go too fast. So when I say slow, I mean it's like almost like shuffling your feet in some areas. Really? Yes. So it's very slow. And this is of course the summit night. In the summit night, you leave at about 10 o'clock at night to summit by sunrise. So you're doing about a 6.5 hour hike at the coldest, at the highest altitude there in Africa. And so it's one of those things that you just keep going and you don't stop.
What happens if you do?
I think my toes and fingers probably would have suffered even more.
You've done Kilimanjaro. Mm-hmm. Are you going to knock off the other 6?
I don't know yet. I don't know.
Did you?
We were talking big afterward, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I've never climbed to that altitude, but looking at that photo, I didn't even know there was a glacier on the top of.
Well, that's what's really interesting about it is as you are climbing, you see that glacier, and it looks like that's the summit. But once you summit, you're looking down on it, and it's very tall, very large, and it's really impressive to see from above.
It's a cool photo. And what's that in the distance there?
That is the adjacent mountain. It's not as tall as Kilimanjaro, but it's quite tall, and so you see that bumping through. And what's interesting is I have some other photos where we see the shadow of Kilimanjaro over that mountain. It's really interesting.
Cool. Very cool. Makes me want to go and do it.
You should. It's worth it. It really is.
Great. Okay, so that was the first photo you sent over. There's a couple others. Which one do you want to go from top to bottom?
Let's do that.
Okay, this is well, do you want to just describe the photo for the listeners?
Yeah, that's a picture of my wife and I at an award ceremony called the Fast Tech 50 in Dallas. Business Journal had this thing they did where they tracked the fastest growing companies. And let's go back a little bit. One of my passions is growing businesses. I love building businesses. It's why I do what I do today.
Where did that come from? When did that start to kind of...
I just have that entrepreneurial mindset. So I love to build businesses. And
were you exposed to that kind of entrepreneurial world as a child, or?
My father is an entrepreneur and has started businesses in the past. But I think it's just something I've always felt I needed to do. I just enjoy the creation aspect of it.
What was your first business?
Well, the first business that I would say the first one that was successful is Progressive Database Systems. And that's picture is when Progressive Database Systems, which was in the late 90s, early 2000s, a database technology pure play. Like we just did technical DBA work. In this picture, this is my wife and I celebrating the Fast Tech 50. It was, I believe, the 5th fastest growing company in the DFW Metroplex, and it was exciting. But it also led to another chapter. See, it was at that event that I met the people that would eventually merge with my company. Together, we would sell that company to EMC. So this is a really important transitional moment. That's why I like this picture so much. I'm celebrating some success of a company I created, and it's teeing up for the next thing, which would be the sale of that company to a larger entity, which has become a repetitive process in my life. I like to build businesses to a point where they're self-sufficient, sell them, and then start another company.
Okay.
And I've done that 3 times now, and I'm in my 4th incarnation with content first marketing.
Great. And I definitely want to dig into that. It kind of seems to be a bit of a theme of the podcast this time round. I'm kind of wondering whether that's we hear what we need to hear when we hear it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So that's interesting. But you mentioned that this company, Progressive
Database Systems,
was a sort of technical pure play database company. Is that your technical skill set, or were you never in the business? You were only great
question. So that business was an example of, I don't know if you've read The E-Myth. It was an entrepreneurial seizure. I was the technician. I started a business doing what I do. So I essentially created a job. Now, I definitely built it into a business. But at the time, I was a DBA, and I was doing Sybase and Oracle and SQL Server, and I thought, I'm going to start a company doing just that. So I was the technician at that time.
And is that something that you studied at college and going back, or?
No, this company I started 5 years out of college.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you study at college?
Management Information Systems.
Okay.
All my businesses do what I studied in school. So it all fits together.
Right. And that's not always the case, is it?
It's not. It's actually, I think it's the exception.
And was that a deliberate choice for you when thinking about what to study, knowing, just hearing you say that kind of entrepreneurial business building stuff was always there? Were you very deliberate about what you studied at college to have something that you would be able to use in your career?
Well, I wish I could say yes, but the reality is like many people that are seniors in high school, I knew I wanted to do something with computers. Didn't really know what that meant. Started out in engineering, moved to computer science, but then I realized that what I wanted to do was work with computers in business. And I didn't even know there was a major called Management Information Systems when I first started college. I didn't learn that until I was there. So once I had changed to Management Information Systems, I knew I was in a field that I just really enjoyed.
Okay.
But it wasn't purposeful. I didn't leave high school intending to be in that area. I discovered that while I was exploring the different options for people that are great with computers.
Yeah, so you stayed focused on what you were good at and what you enjoyed, and you found the path. You mentioned that Progressive Database was your first successful company. I don't like talking about it, but I think the lessons that we learn both about ourselves and about business from stuff not going so well is as valuable as when it does. What mistakes had you made in previous businesses that you took into Progressive Database that helped Progressive Database be a success, would you say?
Well, since Progressive Database Systems was something I started only 5 years out of college, it was the first successful business, but I have a lot of lessons and failures since then that I can share. Prior to that, I started a business in college selling T-shirts. It's something that's very low barrier to entry, very easy to do. But I didn't really have the vision for how something like that would scale. I certainly didn't have the financial acumen to do that. I had done that before I was even in business school. That was when I was still a computer science guy. So I had no real knowledge about accounting principles, planning for growth. And so it was kind of I create some T-shirts, I sell them, and money from that, maybe I create some more, maybe I don't. So you're right, exactly. So the lesson I learned from that was it was almost hindsight. I was like, okay, now I know why that wasn't a successful business. And then after college, I actually worked for companies until I started Progressive Database System.
Okay. So what are some of the mistakes and learnings that you've had about business?
I find that a repetitive mistake that has happened maybe happened with Progressive Database Systems, in Geopatient, and Wave 2, and affiliated fundraising is I put myself in the middle.
Those are all your businesses?
All businesses I've had, some successful, one not. I put myself in the middle of it, and what happens is you create an organization that's like you're the hub and everyone's a spoke around you, or you're the one person and everyone else is a helper, and that doesn't work. It doesn't scale. So for this company, I've attempted to take a different approach, and I find I have to learn that lesson over and over again, that I shouldn't be the center of it, that I need to have my team, the people involved, they should be the point of contact, the center of things, and I should be more around organizing everything and being the visionary.
Did you start this current business with a team in place, or did you start just you and then build the team in place? Because I'm thinking that imagine a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, they start in business with the entrepreneurial seizure as Michael Gerber, sorry, his name just escaped me. And you grow and you take on a team to help you. So it's kind of almost what you described seems to be almost inevitable, because that business owner was there at the beginning and he's kind of adding stuff. So did you start with a team in place with this new business or go into that?
So there are certain roles that from the beginning I have never performed, and I had team members for that. Roles such as copywriting and copy editing, blog writing, graphic design, website development, anything technical in that nature. I've chosen to have team members that are better at that than I am to do it, and that has been very helpful. Where I found myself often in the middle of everything is in the marketing automation, in the weeds of Infusionsoft and those details. I bring on other team members to work in that area, but often I still take that on. So that's why I'm saying I'm still learning these lessons as I go. With this one, at least I have started, like you asked, with a team to do certain roles that do it quite well.
And what is your vision for Content First?
My vision is to grow Content First Marketing into an organization with 1,000 clients, all small businesses, where through us, we're able to truly show them that we can grow their business. And we'll do that through great writing and strong analytical foundation.
I've always naturally gravitated towards change. I kind of, I'd say I revel in it, but I appreciate, I think, the opportunities that come out where change and disruption is happening. How do you look at and deal with change, either small or big?
I love it. I welcome it. Change is typically met with growth, and growth is really what we all strive for. Sometimes people react to change in the who moved my cheese type mentality, but I always look at what is the greater purpose for it. And when we talk about change, like the new Infusionsoft, there is a roadmap ahead, and I'm sure that's going to be wonderful, and we have to get ready for that. But as it stands today, since the way we use the product right now is supporting the services we provide, we can use the classic or the new one. When we can make that decision. And we don't have to worry about change that's happening in Infusionsoft because we can embrace the right product for what we need to accomplish for our client.
Yeah. Change equals growth.
I believe that.
I do too. That's a great thing to focus on. So we've looked at physical challenge of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Is there anything analogous in business that you've experienced to that physical journey?
Well, I'm sure many people feel the same way, that your business never seems to grow as fast as you expect or want it to. And you're always a little impatient about how your business is growing. Many of us have the same type of feeling. I'm that way with my current business. It's growing. I wish it was growing faster based on what I saw 5 years ago. But the most important thing is to keep going forward, to have continuous growth. And much like shuffling your feet up the side of the mountain at 18,000 feet in freezing temperatures, one tiny shuffle at a time, you do the same thing when you're growing your business. Sometimes you have big leaps, but oftentimes it's that consistency of just moving ahead day after day. And whenever I get a little frustrated, I think about that. Am I continuing to move forward? And as long as I'm continuing to move forward, the goals that I've set maybe won't be accomplished immediately, but they will be accomplished.
One shuffle doesn't seem that it's going to get you anywhere. But when you add them all up over, 6 or 7 hours to...
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Wonderful. So we've looked at that. We've looked at this photo of you and your wife. You can tell by the that it was by the color of your hair that it was taken a few years ago. If you don't mind me saying.
I don't mind you. So Progressive Database Systems. I told you that was my first company. I believe that was 2001.
2001. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was before children, and that was a different era.
Right. How did you meet your wife?
We met through actually through two common friends. So a good friend of mine from college and a good friend from her from college. They both knew both of us. And I used to host these happy hours when I was a single guy. And she was invited to one of them. And I met her.
The rest is history?
I was smitten, and the rest is history, yes.
How long have you been married?
We've been married 21 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you've got a couple of kids. It kind of brings us into the last photo that you sent over. Well, you sent a few notes with the email. What did you say about this photo?
Well, we all have to have a why.
Yeah.
And my primary why is my family. It's doing things that will provide for them, but also being present with them and knowing that at this stage in my life, there is a balance between time spent building a company and helping other companies grow theirs and time spent with my family. And so they are the most important why. And this picture I sent you was just taken in July. So it's
very recent.
It's a very recent picture of us.
A wonderful photo. Do you want to just describe it, the kind of location and composition?
This is in Cancun, Mexico. And the photographer said, okay, I just want you guys to all run towards each other and kind of grab each other. And then she took it like that. So it was this motion shot. It was a lot of fun. I had fun taking the picture. So that's why I chose to share it.
And what were you doing in Cancun?
That was vacation.
Okay,
Yeah, we had a nice time in Mexico.
great. And you've got 2 kids from the photo?
That's right. I have a 17-year-old daughter. Her senior year is in high school right now. And I have a 12-year-old daughter who's a 7th grader.
And do they have the same kind of technical bent that their father has, or they?
They're both very smart, and they both have gifts in academics and in arts.
Lovely.
I don't at this time I don't know if they have any interest in the type of work I do. My eldest daughter is more oriented towards the sciences, so she's planning to major in biology in college. And my youngest daughter is in 7th grade, so she's good at her academics and she's strong across the board. We'll see where she goes or gravitates in high school.
It is exciting seeing your children grow. My wife and I, we have 4 between us. We're kind of a merged families, and just fascinating to see different interests and ways of viewing the world. You'd kind of think that there'd be some commonality, but something that's like completely different. It's like
exactly.
Yeah. It's wonderful. That is a really great shot, and I'll steal that idea about running, creating motion before the photo, because if you hadn't said, I wouldn't have known that. But it's definitely captured.
Yeah, she was really a good photographer. She took several of us in motion, including one where we all jumped up in the air at the same time, which was really fun. It was a good experience.
You talked earlier about balance. Is that something that you, as you reflect back on, is something that hasn't been there in your life?
Well, in my early career, I traveled full time, and so I was working very heavy hours. This was before children. But even after...
And this is when you were employed?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. So after college, I would work 80, 90-hour weeks. On my first job, I worked for Arthur Andersen at the time in business systems consulting.
Okay.
And then I moved on to another company, and I ended up traveling extensively every single week. And when I started Progressive Database Systems, that I was traveling full time. In fact, my daughter was 2 or 3 before I finally said, you know what, it's time to stop. It was actually after the merger I decided to stop traveling full time. So balance was a little shifted off back then. It was heavy work in my late 20s and early 30s. And it's only as my children have gotten older that I've worked harder to balance how my time is spent so that I am present when I should be.
And how do you manage that? Because any business owner, entrepreneur, partner listening to this knows that there's always more to be done in the business than there is time available. So how do you approach that kind of, thinking about balance between building a business and, being present?
It can be challenging. I will say one thing: when you're at work, right? Don't do other things. Focus on your work, but also find certain moments where you can spend time. For example, we have breakfast together nearly every day. We have dinner together as a family every day.
Lovely.
And I might go off and do some work afterward, or I might start my day much earlier. I get up at 5, so I start my day earlier than the rest of my family. But I can have those moments where we overlap at meals and on weekends where we get the time together. And I also make sure to attend events when there's a performance, when there's some opportunity for one of my children to showcase themselves. I'm there. I'll be going to a football game to watch my daughter as a cheerleader today in a few hours. So
wonderful.
That's another example.
Well, I went to a proper football game, into a soccer game at FC Dallas yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah. It wasn't the most scintillating of games, but it was interesting to kind of see the American perspective. Yeah. It's really, when I hear you say about having breakfast and particularly having dinner together, something inside me resonated, because that was very much something that I remember from my childhood, is that, and not so much breakfast, we kind of just had it as and when, but certainly my memory is that every evening we had dinner together as a family. And I've got 4 brothers and sisters, and we're all fairly close in age. Was that true of you, and that's why you took it into your life with your own family?
It's definitely true with me. I'm not sure that's why, but maybe subconsciously it is. We always ate as a family when I was growing up. So I have taken that forward. But now I appreciate it so much more at this time in my life.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister that lives in McKinney, Texas, not too far from here.
Great. So you're able to stay close. And
Yep. We'll be having lunch Thursday.
Brilliant. Lovely. Love the energy that's in that photo. It's a great energy. Okay, so there's a structure that's evolved in these chats, and I ask every guest to kind of just reflect on a book that they think has influenced them, changed them in some way that's kind of material, I guess. And you replied with a book. You said it was difficult, but you did zero in on one. Do you want to say what the book is? We can have a chat about that for a bit.
Did I say As a Man Thinketh?
Yes, you
okay,
did, yeah.
Because there are several, and it was difficult. I enjoy reading, but that one, what I really liked about it was the simplicity and the focus of the message. Simplicity is simply a man becomes his thoughts. And the book is short. It's easy to read, but it just resonates so well.
When did you read it? How old were you?
I've read it many times. Probably read it for the first time, maybe in college sometime. Around, let's just say, early 20s or late teens.
Was it recommended to you, or did you kind of gravitate?
I think it probably came out of listening to tapes by like Earl Nightingale or people like that, that more motivational in nature. I'm sure that's where it came from. But whenever things aren't quite going the way I expect, I'll sit down and read it. I can read it quickly, and it reminds us all that our thoughts, they become our reality, whether they're positive or negative. And it's really important to remember that when you're going down a certain path that might not necessarily lead to where you really wanted to go.
And can you give any specific examples of being in a position where you thought, no, I need to go back and remind myself about that, and then the path changed, or what have you?
Okay, I can pick one point in time. It was the last company I had, Wave 2. That's the one I sold in 2012. Wave 2 was having some challenges, and it was around 2011.
Okay.
And that also was coinciding with a time where I was maybe going out for beers more than I should during the week, maybe not necessarily as focused as I should be. And then I remember thinking, wake up, we're not going down the right path, and adjusted my mindset. And the effect of that was I ended up losing 40 pounds. I ended up meeting the people that were eventually be the company that acquired Wave 2. And within a year of that change in mindset, I was a healthier person, and I'd had the opportunity and sold my company. So that was a true transformation, and the only change was in mindset.
It probably won't surprise you, John, that mindset has come up quite often in these conversations with partners. What does mindset mean to you, and how would you describe the kind of optimal mindset for people that are in our position of being partners and growing businesses, hopefully to sell, but maybe for other reasons?
You have to realize that, one, you have to know what you want to happen will happen, but two, you have to realize that it's going to be accompanied with hard work, that you can't wish your way with mindset. Mindset is, I'm going to be here. Then now it's get to work and do it, and make sure the two are working together. And then this third piece, which I can only call faith, the true belief that no matter where things are today, if you know where you want to be, you'll eventually get there. And that's how I like to tie everything together. And that's a daily journey, right? That's not something that you do once and you're done. You get an email or a text from a client that's having trouble. Sometimes you jump into the weeds and you lose track of your greater picture, greater objective. But always bringing yourself back, and then the way you do that is to have some time that's quiet time. Now, whether that's a form of meditation, whether that's prayer, whether that's sitting quietly on the couch with all the lights turned out, having some quiet time by yourself to kind of reset your mindset. That's what I do. And every morning I get up and either I sit with my thoughts or I'm on a walk. And I do that as a method to reset, sometimes on a run.
It's paradoxical, isn't it? Because you think, well, if I'm not out there doing and solving problems and kind of working through my task list, then stuff's not going to get done. But
you're right, but you always have to make time for yourself.
Would you describe yourself as a spiritual person?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have faith.
How important is that to you, both in your personal and your business life?
It's very important in my life and the life of my family that we have faith. And everybody may have a different view or have different faiths, but it all comes to the same thing, is believing that you will get to where you want to be, whether it's a financial goal, a family situation, or just some sort of feeling that you want to get towards. Having faith that you'll get there is really important to me.
Faith and belief. Well, I think that's a great way to kind of end formal, in inverted commas, chat for the podcast. Have faith, have belief. John, I really appreciate you taking time out of your Sunday to come and meet me here. I appreciate your openness and vulnerability on the podcast, and I look forward to staying connected with you and seeing how our journeys evolve from here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, John, for that. Thank you for taking time out of a family day to spend a bit of time with me and the rest of the partner community to tell us a little bit about yourself. I really enjoyed the conversation and I appreciate you. And listen, if you have issues or challenges with producing content and publishing content in your business or your clients' businesses, then reach out, connect to John. That's one of the reasons to do this podcast, is so that we all have a better idea of what we all do. And although we're all Infusionsoft partners, we've all got our own take on the world, and we've all got our own thing that we're great at, that kind of just makes it easier for others to get on with what they're great at. So reach out to John, connect with him, if for no other reason than just to say that you listened to this episode and you appreciated what he had to share. So, true to Dark Sky's prediction, it has started to rain, so I'm going to wrap this up now and say I'll see you in 2 weeks. Again, not 100% sure who's going to be with us next week, so that'll be a surprise for me as for you. And I'll see you same time in a couple of weeks. Until then, look after yourself, look after your loved ones, won't you? And I'll see you then. Love you. Bye.